The next complicated question when working with the X Loom is how do you set up the wedges for, say you wanted to work on a hat or a sock or that kind of thing. Well, first, it's my suggestion that you go underneath the loom and you do a whole bunch of specs as to how the loom is set up and what it does, okay? So my suggestion to you is get you some specs written out on the bottom of your loom, okay? And what you want on those specs is how many pegs there are total on the loom, okay? And that should be easy. It should be in the listing and that kind of thing. Then you want to know how much they'll decrease down to, okay? And I actually also list these in the blog in specs, so you just need to write them down on the loom on the bottom, and that'll make it easier for you, okay? Now this was my original design of the loom, but this is not what you get. It's more shallow, okay? So for instance, you know it decreases down to a minimum of 24 pegs, okay? So that is, say, the 3/8 inch gauge, and I do believe the 1/2 inch gauge. But the 5/8 inch gauge decreases down to 16. Okay, so you need to know how much it decreases down to. So you know 24 on this one. As I said, I put the specs online so that it's easier for you to go off of. Alright, well, then you need to find out how much you can do on a single prong, as I call them. And then you can count that out, and then you need to put that down as a note. Okay, and I believe this is either 34 or 32, so 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30. Okay, it's 30. I thought it was a little bit more than that. Okay, so it's 30 on each prong. So you know you could do something with at least 30 pegs off of a single prong. So you can make a sock for somebody who's a child on, say, these smaller, this is the smaller 3/8 inch gauge X Loom. Okay, so you need to write how much you can do on a prong. Then you need to see how many pegs you get when you max out your you max out your wedges, okay? And then you need to count out. Alright, that'll tell you how many total you can work with there. And again, all these are on the blog, and I will put the link below because that has a lot of information about the looms. Okay, so you take them all out. Now, here is my other suggestion. When trying to figure out what size number of pegs you need, and if you're used to working with a certain set of pegs for a certain hat size, keep with that concept. So for instance, on the 3/8 inch gauge, a lot of your hat looms are either 60 for an infant, 72 for a toddler or child, 80 for a small adult head, 88 to 90 for a large or extra large adult head. Keep with those basics, okay? So if you have a certain set of hat looms, then you have a number of pegs you can work with already. The trick is finding out how many to set the wedges up to, okay? So you can go with your standard hat size looms. Makes it really easy, and you can use patterns that are already on the market if you set it up with standard hat sizes. And the only adjustment you'd have to do is at the crown. A lot of people just knit at the crown. You can do the decreasing method that I like to do, where you do a row, then you decrease. You do a row, and then you decrease. Okay. So what you do in order to calculate, let's say we want to do an 80 peg, we want to do an 80 peg hat. Well, you need to divide that by 4. Yes, there is some math involved. You need to divide it by 4. Okay, and what that is, when you divide 80 by 4, is 20. which means each prong has 20, and it does have to be an even number, okay? So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, and remember that the wedges are peg 20, 19 and 20. Okay, so you got to find your center mark, and you may want to mark those pegs where you can easily count it out by twos. That makes it a lot easier. So you're not hitting her. Makes it a lot easier if you can count it out by twos. Okay, so yes, there is some basic math involved. Alright, this is not beginner. You can teach special needs. You can teach that kind of simplicity to it. It is a more complicated loom. You do have to have math involved in order to figure out your peg count. So for instance, that one's easy. You count 20 on each one. Alright, so let's say you have 88 or even 90 divided by 4. Okay, so 90 divided by 4 is, I believe that's 22 point something, 22 point something. Okay, which means one of your single wedges is going to be off by 1, so it's going to be 22 and then some. Okay, so we're going to move that out because that's 22, because we knew that was 20. Okay, so then we're going to come in here and go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, and 22. Alright, so set it up at its basics, and then you have to figure out how to adjust it. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, and 22. So we're setting up for 90. Now, that was a 0.5 in there, okay? And so 90 is probably actually going to be one extra. It's probably going to be a single wedge is going to be at 24. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, and I'm going to put in 24. Alright, so this should probably be 90. If you want to make sure, get your cell phone out and type in 22, 22, 22, and 24 and see what your number you get is. Okay, and that is the quickest way to figure it out. And then once you have that figured out, you may want to take notes. So as you're figuring out your basics, take notes on what your setup is for each prong so that you have that. So there's a lot of notes to set up. So setting up the wedges can be difficult. There is math involved. You need to know how to divide by 4 because you have 4 prongs. And then if you end up with an odd number, usually you're going to have, I can't remember which one it is that has the weirdness. Sometimes you'll have 2 that are the same and 2 that are a little smaller. You can put them on opposite sides of each other. Because usually you're so close to, you're just 1 or 2 pegs off on a prong, it's not a big deal if you're making a hat. Usually what I do is the first decrease, I get the extra where it's off set back to where it's all even, and then I decrease down. Or you can do that at the last time that you decrease. Okay, so but this is like a basic setup, and that's how you do it. And then you just go in and you add it all together, so you see if it adds up. And you can physically go in and count the pegs, but setup is the more difficult part, and that's generally how you go about doing it.